Hi, Misha here, and as promised, we're finally doing a black box. And there are a lot of things I want to talk about, so probably we'll do multiple black boxes because finally back out at the cabin. Was out here at the end of January, left out right at the end of the month, beginning, I can't remember if it was like January 30th or February 2nd when I came back, doesn't really matter. And I was planning to come back right after Valentine's Day. Spend Valentine's Day with my wife and then get back out here mid-February to shoot some guns and take care of some videos for this channel. But we had a very cold weather. If you saw the videos on the main Mishaco channel, I did a couple on the Finnish Winter War and Continuation War. And during the day, our high was around 8 to 10 degrees a couple of days, and for basically a week, it was well under freezing for the day. Nighttime temperatures got down to -8 to -10. Not the coldest we've had in recent years, but it was very sustained cold. And while I'm sure it was gorgeous to be out here in the snow, I was always concerned, what if I got out here and we lost power? As it turns out, the power didn't actually go out for some miracle, but that would have not been a good place to get stuck. So I do regret not being here for that, but also am glad I wasn't here for that. And then the event happened that I also mentioned at the beginning of the Winter War video. We lost Miss Hobo, the old cat. So I thought, return to Blackbox. And this one is an ode to a hobo. So that I'd kind of tell her story as it pertains to us, because she was rather close-lipped about her life before she rescued us. Yeah, and it's hard, I'm not gonna lie. Some of my earliest childhood memories were of one of my, I guess it was my first dog. I only had him a year and a half. He got hit by a car. And then my second dog had a couple of years. I knew to, keep him in, and he got pneumonia, and he fought and died. And that hurt as a kid. In some ways, I think it's sharper when you're young. Like, the day they die, nothing's right. As you get older, it doesn't wreck your entire day like that. But when you're a kid, 2 weeks later, a month later, you're over it. You're on to other things. You get older, it doesn't hurt as much when you lose things, but it persists. It's like an ache. Instead of a sharp pain, it's just an ache that doesn't seem to go away. Hell, I still miss Oscar, who we lost 2.5 years ago. And he died in my hands, and, well, Hobo, to her credit, up to the end was at least somewhat more independent, but I was in the room with her when she passed. And, well, in some ways we got lucky. It's never easy to lose one, but, none of us live forever. So this is how Hobo came to be part of our family. Rewind almost 10 years to the day. My wife and I moved at the end of 2014, and at that time, believe it or not, we had 2 cats, Osimo and Oscar. The thing is, Oscar was kind of both of our cat, although he tended to gravitate towards me just because I was home more. Osimo was definitely my cat. She did not like my wife. She would bite her and stuff. After we moved, we thought it would be good to maybe get my wife a cat. And so we went to the shelter, and I had been there before. I knew there were other rooms, but she went in the first room and thought there was just, the one room of cages, and there was a cat listed to be about 18 months old named Seamus. He was gray and white, and basically we opened the cage and he thought, this is my time, and he literally latched onto us, started kind of chewing our fingers, and he wouldn't even let us go look at other cats. And we're like, well, I guess he's kind of become our cat. And so even when we were like trying to put him in the box again just so he could go do the paperwork, adoption paperwork at the front desk, he would not allow this. He knew this was his time to shine, and that's the sad thing about older dogs and cats at shelters. Once they're no longer puppies or kittens, their chances of getting adopted go down, especially for senior cats. Seamus wasn't senior. Like I said, they said he was estimated to be about 18 months old. But it's like he knew that he had to go for the people that were at least giving him an entertainment. And so while he and I get along just fine, he is my wife's cat, so it worked out perfectly. And he integrated him. Or the first night we got him home, he just walked through every room in the house, just meowing and trilling to himself, so goddamn happy, like he had found his home. He integrated in. Him and Oscar became buddies. Osimo hated him, but not because he was mean to her. He just tried to make friends with her and couldn't understand why she was a bitch. We actually nicknamed her Bitch because she was just she was calico. I don't know why. We've never had another cat with her attitude. She just had an attitude. What ended up happening to her after we got other cats, she started tearing her own fur out of frustration. She couldn't share. She ended up going to live outside, and she was happy as a clam. When I tried to bring her back in, she fought me, so I left her out. She would do things, and she stayed outside for about 5 years. Then she moved on, but yeah, I don't know if she passed away or someone else took her in when she got older, but she quit. She'd stay around our yard, and I'd see her, and then I wouldn't. Anywho, why am I talking about Seamus? Well, fast forward about a year and a half. October 2016, or maybe September, I can't remember. Late summer, early fall. My wife used to go home to see her family in Russia for 2 weeks or so. About every year, sometimes every year and a half. For some reason, she has not been able to do that since the end of 2019. Can't imagine why. Well, so I was there alone. And Seamus, while he is a good cat, we still have him. He's had a few health battles. He gets urinary tract infections, yada yada, but he's still a kicking, so he's about 12 now. He does like to run outside. It's a game to him. I really try to keep all of our pets inside for their own health, safety. There's nothing they need out there. Again, one of my earliest childhood memories is having a dog being hit by a car. And I had another cat who she was an adopted cat, just insisted on being outside too, and she got hit. I just haven't had good luck. Sorry to get back. So my wife's gone, and I'm outside, and I hear meowing. And I think, oh, Seamus got out. So I kind of half go over to the meowing and half call the meowing over to me. And I put my hands down. And I start to pick up Seamus. Except it was not Seamus. It was not my cat. I was not familiar with this body. It did not have a collar. And it's meowing. And I thought, I'm about to have my arms and face clawed off. Because, a very vocal cat that doesn't know you, you don't know them, is probably going to not take that very well. Well, I didn't. The cat meowed. It was about the same size as Seamus, maybe slightly smaller. And as it turns out, actually very similar in color, gray and white. Seamus was slightly lighter gray, this one was slightly darker, and this one had a white spot on its back. But it was so similar to Seamus that, as it turns out, all that summer people had been saying, hey, Seamus is outside, looking at the window, thinking it was this cat. So this cat had actually been casing the joint like it was going to steal catnip from us for at least a couple of months at this point. Okay. Not much happens. J-Ro comes over that evening, and we're eating curry. We got some Indian food, and it's a nice evening, so we're out on the porch. And this cat shows up, and I kind of tell him the story from earlier that day, and he goes, you just got a new cat. I said, fuck you, no I didn't. I said, it's just just a cat. Yeah, that was Hobo. After that night, I fed her some curry because we were eating, and she was obviously hungry. She ate some chicken curry. And between then and November, December, she was pretty much just an outdoor cat that'd come up and say hi to me. But when it got cooler, I forget exactly the inspiration that day, but I brought her in. She was kind of curious around, and I was kind of curious what would happen. And I brought her in. My wife hadn't come home from work yet. And keep in mind, this cat's not really met my wife before, because when she first started hanging out, my wife wasn't even in the country. And then outside, so I brought her in and took her to the bedroom, and my wife, not freaked out, but was like, oh, take her out. She could be dirty. She might have diseases. I'm like, oh, she's fine. I could already tell that this cat was a people cat. Like, her fur was clean. She wasn't all scabbed up. She had a couple of scars because of neighbor dogs, but as it turns out, too, she was already spayed. And that's how it goes. And as things got colder, she kind of started being an inside-outside cat. She'd come in for a bit, but when she wanted out, she'd go to the side door and meow. And Hobo was a very vocal cat. Not in an annoying way, but she was just very persistent and meowed when she wanted out. She'd go out, do her yard thing, and then when she wanted in, she'd come to the side door and meow to have me let her in. And at this point, just started calling her Hobo because it was a stray cat, that was kind of hanging out, and I didn't know how long it would be around. And a lot of people thought it was a boy because of the size, but somehow I just knew, based on the way she acted and treated me, that she was an old mama cat, that she'd had kittens. She just had that vibe to her, that very maternal cat vibe, Well, what kind of solidified it, one night she didn't come meowing at the door for me to let her in. But then I heard the ever so just quietest tapping at the door an hour or two after she usually came in. Well, as it turns out, the neighbor dog got after her and nipped her a couple of times, and she had a couple of wounds. Nothing life-threatening, but, broke the skin. So I'm like, okay, well, time to take her to the vet. Need to get her stitched up, and might as well see if she's got a microchip, if she's anyone's cat, just do the basic stuff. Ironically, this is the same way we ended up with Oscar. He hung around our front yard for a few days and then got bit by a brown recluse spider. Found out because his legs swelled up. And I was like, well, I can't let the poor thing suffer. So I took him to the vet, and the vet's like, well, you got to give him medicine for 2 weeks, try to keep him off his leg as much as possible, and that's how I ended up with Oscar. I played nursemaid to him. Well, it's not quite to the same degree, but took Hobo into the vet, and they started to argue with me that it was a boy, and I was like, nope. And then they found the scar from where she was spayed, and we know it was a long time ago because it was an actual scalpel scar, not laser. And they didn't know how old she was. Keep in mind, this is the end of 2016, but they estimated 8 to 12 years then. So, mature, not ancient, but mature. And she acted like it. She carried herself like a cat who had been around a bit. But she also didn't act abused. She wasn't shying away. And there was something about me that must have reminded her of her former owner, because she adopted me. I didn't adopt her. She would observe me. If I'd go out to the gun room to work on a gun, she'd come to the door on one end, and then she'd just watch me work. Or if I went to the bathroom, she'd sit on the back of the toilet to watch me shower. And I know she was watching me because I could put food in the food bowl, and she'd eat until I started the shower. She'd stop eating, go watch me in the shower. Once I got out of the shower safely, then she'd return to her food bowl. She was extremely concerned about me showering. In fact, we used to joke that she just couldn't understand humans were so stupid that they use water instead of, the respectable way of grooming with their tongue. In fact, we used to say she was the propriety cat. She behaved that way. I tell you, when we took her to the vets and they needed to do, like, take a stool sample or anything, and they tried to do stuff with her rear, that was not propriety. She yowled, and they kept saying, she's clenching. Can you help? Can you do something? What the hell do you want me to do? You're the vet. It's like, she doesn't like people doing stuff back there. That was the only time she'd ever kind of get cranky with the other cats if they tried to smell her rear. But other than that, she was good-natured. A lot of times, like a lot of older cats, she just wanted to be left alone. If some of the younger ones started to get a little too frisky, she'd just kind of take her paw and what we call bop them. Just kind of, with her claws still, and she never scratched. She wasn't a fighter. And her and Oscar became best buddies. They had a game where they would fight over the same office chair, but it was only fun because they would fight. Like, one would see the other one in the chair and try to get the other one to leave. They wouldn't attack, but they would do things. For example, Oscar would get on top of the chair and stare down at Hobo, and she'd try to ignore him for a while, and eventually it would irritate her enough she would leave. And then Oscar would be in the chair, and she'd act like there was new food, like she'd keep running to the food bowl, and he'd get excited about food, and then she'd take the chair. And it was just their little game. They never, ever fought, but it was so funny. And once in a while, one of them would come up to me and show me, like, they wanted me to pick the other one up off the chair so they could have it. I was, I guess, the referee they'd bring in. And I know it was all the game for the chair, because after we lost Oscar, Hobo lost complete interest in that chair. Never wanted to sit in it again. Earl ended up taking it over, because that's Earl for you. But they were good buddies. I could tell a lot of stories about Hobo. She was most likely the most intelligent cat I've ever had and maybe ever will have. That cat was scarily intelligent. She figured out how to open doors, which I know other cats do, but she knew our habits. She kept an eye on us, and she knew how to get treats and stuff, not in an annoying way like cats, but just sit very patiently in one spot and just stare at you. And yeah, I don't know, it's hard to explain if you didn't know her, but she was just very intelligent and very caring about us. Like, she wanted to make sure we were alright. And that actually comes to a story I'll tell at the end of her life. I remember one time we had taken her to get her booster shots and rabies vaccine, and she did not like that. She went out to my gun room, went under the old couch, and we looked and looked, didn't see her. Turns out she'd actually kind of crawled up inside the couch, and she stayed there for like 3 days. We thought maybe she'd run outside. We knew she was upset about going. She did not like the vets, as you can tell. That was her only thing. And I looked and looked, and I was so worried. And I thought, well, did she crawl up somewhere and die? Did she have an adverse reaction to the vaccine? Or did she get so mad at us and just leave our house? After all, she showed up here a couple of years. We're at about 2018, 2019 now. I was actually over at Jay's house shooting guns, and my wife texted saying to Jay, saying, tell Misha that his Hobo's okay. She had finally forgave us and came out from underneath the couch. But I didn't know a cat could go that long without crapping everywhere or eating or whatever. And she didn't sneak out and do it at night because that room was shut. So it's just nothing for her to eat. But she was just, no. And one of her things she liked to do, on the other hand, she wasn't much of a lap cat. She'd jump up in my lap for me to scratch her ears. She liked her ears scratched and stuff. But she would rarely settle down on my lap. And if she did, she'd sit almost ramrod straight. Now, if I put the leg of the feet rest, the leg rest of the chair out, she would kind of curl up there and lay at my feet. And what she really liked, though, was for me to lay on the bed on my stomach, and she would hop on my back. And she loved to stretch out and sleep on my back. And she'd knead dough. And yes, it was painful till she settled down. She'd do it for a minute or two and then get happy and settle down. And, I put up with it, unless she just really happened to get the skin the wrong way and I couldn't help myself. But she was happy, and I knew it kept her warm as she got older. But they're all different. They all have their own little little things. Oh, and when I would go outside, like to sit on the swing, work in the yard, she'd sit in the windows. Our windows in our living room are kind of low to the ground, just to, the bottom of the window is only a couple of feet from the ground. So she'd sit in that window and very, very cautiously observe me. And that's how life went on for a while. Her health was good, aside from being upset about vet visits. And she got along with the other cats, aside from Massimo, who didn't get along with anyone. In fact, about the time Hobo came in is when Massimo went out. Hobo started living inside pretty much full-time the early winter of 2016, 2017, and Massimo decided she was an outside cat spring of 2017. So that was her choice. Again, what can I do? Jealousy. But she thrived for like 4 years outside, so who am I to say? And Hobo thrived inside. She never completely stopped trying to run outside, but after the dog attack, she was much more cautious about it. And she would only dart out on occasion, and I think it was mainly to find us or find me. In fact, a few times I think she kind of got a little confused. And as she got older, her eyesight started to go. And sometimes I could tell the arthritis was kicking up. Actually, a few years ago, it was kind of getting bad. Like, she'd go to try to jump on a counter and miss, and we just agreed that never happened. I was the only one there. She just, because cats and dignity. But actually, this last year, she's been better at it. She's been a good jumper. But I think part of it, too, I told you she was a pretty big cat. She wasn't fat. She was never a fat cat. She was stocky. She was just thick, but never had like fat rolls or anything, because she was active and she didn't eat a ton. But she was just a thick cat, thick bones and stuff. But I've noticed over the last year, she's been losing mass, like just slimming down. She's still been eating. In fact, her appetite is better than ever. We did mostly switch her from hard food to soft food, because it was easier for her to eat and digest with her aging teeth. I hate letting a cat or dog eat only soft food from the beginning, because it's not great for their teeth. But I figured at her age, it didn't really matter. And it gave her, in fact, she really got to look forward to when we'd open up a fresh can of cat food. That would make her day. I'd usually open up a can and put it out there while I showered, shut the bathroom door, so it was just her and Peanut, and they would eat together. And that way the other cats wouldn't steal it, the younger ones. But I noticed she was getting slimmer. I guess the good thing is it probably helped with the arthritis. It seems like her joints didn't bother her as much. And she was making jumps better. And I think part of it too was, even though her eyesight was pretty not good, she got real familiar with the house and things. And she had her routine, and she had her space, and she was the ruler of the house. She was the alpha. So I always said she's kind of the old mama cat. In fact, we had a long-standing joke that she was Seamus's mother, because, again, they looked very similar. They're both very intelligent. They had some of the same mannerisms, and she would look at Seamus and just act like, well, he's your responsibility now. So that was our long-standing joke, that after we adopted Seamus in 2015, Hobo showed up looking for her son in 2016. And we don't know where she came from. She wasn't microchipped, and no one in the community said they were missing a cat. And again, she didn't seem abused, and she wasn't unkempt or scrawny when she came to us. She'd obviously been living outside for a minute, but I don't think she was outside any longer than like this summer, because she definitely took to being inside perfectly, like using the litter. We never had problems with her not using the litter box. She understood food time. She'd obviously been someone's inside cat. Oh, and she knew not to like scratch things and stuff, I don't know. My theory was maybe she was an older person's cat, because she wasn't real crazy about kids and loud noises. She liked nice, quiet, calm people. I wonder if she was an old person's cat who had to go to a nursing home, or maybe sadly passed away. The old person, not the cat. It's also possible she was just a runaway for some reason. Maybe a household was quiet and then they got extra kids and she was done with it. Or maybe her family moved away and couldn't find her. Like I said, she used to run outside a lot to the dog attack. I don't know, and she wouldn't say. And she wouldn't even confirm to us her age. But in the last year or two, it's been clear that she's, getting to the end. I think I noticed it more because I would come out here to the cabin for a week or two and then come home and see she was just a little bit smaller each time. Whereas my wife, who was with her all the time, she knew she was losing weight. But she was running around. She was happy. She was sleeping, drinking, eating, pooping regularly. She was just getting older. And you can't do anything about that, sadly. Aside from cloning. I always said we could clone her. I'd love to see a tiny little serious cat. I think that'd be hilarious. Because as a kitten, she was still just as super serious as she was as an adult. She just had that like British school marm thing going on. I don't know. And we knew we'd have a limited time. When Oscar passed 2.5 years ago, I talked to Hobo and said, please don't go too, because they were my cats. Her, Oscar, and Peanut were the ones that mostly hung out together and stayed together in my room. So I didn't really have the wherewithal to lose two. And to her credit, she hung around another 2.5 years herself. There was never any point where she really got sick. And it looked like she might make it for a while. But then that cold weather snap hit. And I noticed that she stopped coming to eat food. And then I would bring her in and she'd eat some. But then she stopped even really wanting to eat that. And the weight loss became kind of undeniable. And yeah. But again, happily, there were no crazy symptoms like seizures, shuddering, failure to use the litter box, really even failure to groom, not until the very, very end. She kept herself well maintained. She would still come in and sleep with us on the bed. Yes, she was one of the cats that was allowed to do that. I know some will object to it, but you tell a cat that's probably 20 years old now and see what you think. And did her usual stuff. She was just slowing down. I noticed she was starting to kind of run into my legs at the house, or I'd run into her because she couldn't move out of the way fast enough. And then she took the turn. And we were snowed in. And I was very, very, very worried that something would happen where you would really need the vet's help to ease her final days. We had to do that with Oscar. And unfortunately, with the snow, we were stuck. We had all kinds of food. We had like high protein paste, very, very, it was basically just paste that a cat even without teeth couldn't digest. We had minced food. We had all kinds of food for her to try. And she'd try some for a bit, and then she just basically stopped eating. And what was sad, and I don't know exactly what it was, but she'd sit in front of the bowl for a bit and just look down at it. And I don't know if it just didn't seem appetizing to her or what. She'd still drink water, but then towards the end we even had to start giving her water with a dropper, an eyedropper. And that's what it was. And then, she got to where she really couldn't groom. And so we moved her into the bedroom and turned the little space heater we had in there on high. Because, again, it's really cold out. So even keeping the heater going in the house full time, it couldn't keep up. So we put her in the warmest room in the house and would go check on her, put her in blankets. Would do our best to force feed her, at least put something in her. And try to give her some water. But at this point, we know it's just a matter of days, if not hours. So we kind of talked with her and told her things and did that. To her credit, she never messed herself. She never pooped on the bed. She never peed. I think part of it was she was starting to get dehydrated, but again, maybe if we'd had a vet, we could have given her an intravenous. But again, going all the way back, she hated vets, and that's what we thought. Like, we were afraid it would traumatize her more than just letting her pass on our own terms at home, where she was comfortable. She's not crying. She's still jumping around a little bit. She's just lost her appetite. And what do you do about that? She didn't seem like she was in any pain. Like, she still tried to come to us. She'd still purr. Even up until the final night, she slept with me. She like kind of sleeping between my legs or on my side. And even the second to last night of her life, she still slept there. Didn't move much, and I'd reach down and check on her throughout the night. But I know she was keeping warm with me, and that's all we could do. And then the final day came, which was Wednesday of that cold week. Her last day, she was comfortable as best it could be. She knew who we were. It was a true blessing that she kept her mind. She didn't go senile or really lose focus. She knew who we were. She would still acknowledge us when we came. And we would just go sit with her and pet her and tell her we were there. We took kind of shifts. My wife was working at home. I was at home. So kind of went in and out. And eventually just started telling her it's okay to let go. The thing is, I knew that she was kind of still fighting because she was somehow worried about us. Like, how can those silly humans live without her guidance? Maybe I'm anthropomorphizing here, but I don't care. I've lived with her for almost 10 years. I know her ways. And she kept on going. It's amazing how much she fought. She started having trouble breathing a little bit, but it was mostly because there was starting to be some mucus discharge from her nose. Once we kind of cleaned her nose and helped her sneeze some of that out, she actually started breathing easier. And being stuck at home, I used ChatGPT and gave the symptoms, and long story short, it basically just said general organ failure. Not much you could do. It said keep her hydrated, keep her safe, warm, spend time. We were already doing everything that was recommended. I don't think the vet could have done anything more, frankly. And I think taking her to the vet would have just hastened the end and traumatized her, and she wouldn't have been able to pass it home. But that evening, there were a couple of times when I thought maybe it was the end. And at one point, around dusk, she went under the bed, and she didn't usually go under the bed. And I thought, well, she's going to find a place. That's what. It doesn't surprise me that she's that type. Some animals, when they're at the end, they want you to hold them, and other animals want to go with dignity. That's how my last dog was. He, said goodbye to us, found himself a nice spot under a bush, and that was that. The thing is, when I went in, my wife said, oh, she went under the bed. She was even worrying how to get her out afterwards. I said, well, we'll figure it out. It's not a big deal. At this point, the poor cat, skin and bones, she's just, withering away, but that's just how it goes. Luckily, there's no, bulging or, obvious points of fluid in her. She still used the bathroom. She wasn't backed up, so that's good. But I came in and was talking, and I jokingly said, want to go shower? Because remember, she liked watching me shower. That poor cat drug herself out of the bed, underneath it, tried to meow at me. By this point, she's losing her voice, and tried to actually come with me to the shower. I felt things. Even at the end, she was still trying to do her routine. Of course, I just sat with her and told her it was okay. So we bundled her up in some blankets, put her on the bed, went to cook dinner. One of us sat with her. And she just kind of stopped acknowledging things. But one time when we both left, she tried to get off the bed and she kind of fell off the bed, and we found her on the floor. So then we had to move her to a cat bed. We had a nice clean cat bed, put her in there with blankets, and she rested there, and we could still go over and talk to her. She'd open her eyes occasionally, and I'd get up in the middle of the night. Now it's nighttime, we're in bed, and we had to put the cat bed on the floor because if she tried to get up again, we didn't want her falling off the bed. Luckily the first time she didn't hurt herself, but the second time, what if she fell wrong, broke her neck? We didn't want her to go that way. I got up in the middle of the night once thinking maybe it was the time, and I found her in the middle of the floor. She tried to crawl out of her cat bed and come up on the bed with us. Even at the end, she's still fighting. We put her back in the bed, bundle her up. That morning, my wife gets up about 6, 7 a.m. She does acknowledge her, does give her a little bit of water. She kind of takes it, just eye dropping it on her tongue to keep her at least a little hydrated best we can. And then the day starts, and it's pretty much a vigil. We go in and check, and we thought she was gone a few times. She stopped acknowledging us at all, and we only noticed she was just ever so slightly breathing. And it seems like sometime late that morning, she just slipped into a coma quietly in her cat bed. And again, kept fighting. It's amazing. But that afternoon, she finally stopped. And that was that. So, by the time off work and everything, we confirmed around 5 that she was definitely no longer breathing at all. And that was that. So yeah, we lost Hobo the cat, February of 2025. Don't know how old she was for sure because she was a lady and never would tell her age. But based on the vet's estimation, she was somewhere between 21 and on the kind of other end, maybe 18. And you can't say that's not a good run for most cats, especially one that changed homes and was living outside. And from the get-go, when I knew I would lose my cat, I just hoped that she would go easy and safe, and she did. She was warm. She knew we were there up until she didn't know anything anymore. She was in her bed, and she didn't do it awake. Like, again, she slipped into sleep and then coma, and hopefully dreams of whatever, and then passed away. I hope somewhere, someplace, her and Oscar are fighting over a chair. I don't know what an animal afterlife would be. I don't know what a human afterlife really is. But I do know, if souls at all exist, animals definitely have them. Some animals seem like they have more of a soul than some people you meet. But she found us, she found her home, and we did our best by her. Going back to talking about Seamus at the beginning of the video, if we'd turned her over to the shelter, it would have been so hard for even a good-natured, although reserved, cat, she wasn't very playful, but she was very loving, to get adopted. And we did our best by her. Aside from letting the vet do butt stuff to her, which she barely forgave us for. And I tried to be there to the end for her. And I think she knew that. I think she knew I was in the room. And we had to put her in a box outside. Luckily, it's still sub-zero, and had to do like the old-fashioned 19th century way that they would do with humans. Put them in the parlor, as it were, where they would stay preserved for a couple of days. But when it broke freezing that Friday, we took her to the vet and had her taken care of. We do cremation. It's the easiest way when you live in a city, but we do the single private one And amazingly, they actually brought her back home not even a week later. Usually they take a couple of weeks, but I guess they weren't too busy. So even before I came out here, Hobo was able to come back home. So that kind of completed the cycle. Now she's next to Oscar on the shelf. Some might find that morbid. It's not, though. But it's definitely something younger me would not have understood. I told the story many times when I was getting my first guide dog named Brandy. When they do guide dogs, people can sponsor them. And one of the things of sponsoring a dog, you can kind of pick the dog's name. Because I don't, the handlers of the dogs don't name them. Because when you get the dog, they're 2.5 years old already because they're trained. Well, Brandy's sponsors named him after their dog, Brandy. And when I met the woman and husband, but mainly the woman that stares in my mind, she actually had a vial around her neck, a necklace, that contained some of the ashes of her Brandy. And at the time I thought, that's weird. Keep in mind, these are New Yorkers from Long Island, and this is one of my first times out of Arkansas. And again, I'm 17, what the hell do I know? I get it now, and I've got it for years, but it's whatever brings you comfort, and it's whatever keeps something close. And to say things like ashes or cemeteries have no meaning is arrogant. We don't know. If anything else, it's the symbology, it's the respect. Now, I never brought Hobo out to the cabin. For one, she did not like to travel. For two, her eyesight was not very good, so I don't think she would have ever acclimatized, there's a word I just made up, acclimate to the cabin, If she'd been younger, I probably would have. But she didn't ever seem to get mad at me when I came out here. When I would come home, she would come up to me, say hello, check me out, and then be fine. She wasn't one of those cats that adopted the attitude when you left them, that they were pissed at you. Peanut, on the other hand, knew. When I would come out here without her, when we were still building it, she would curl up in a corner, barely eat, barely come out, and she would completely snub me for a few hours once I got home until she couldn't take it anymore. And then she would love bomb me for like 3 days and not hardly let me take a step. So I knew once the cabin had running water and stuff, yeah, Peanut had to be here. In fact, she's probably pacing inside right now, ready for me to come in. But while she's not young, she's not old either, so she could acclimate. Plus, we're better off. That said, after we lost Hobo, it impacted Peanut a lot. She really started glowing onto me at the house even more and kind of looking around. Again, she already lost Oscar a couple of years ago. Now, Hobo. So for both of us, coming out to the cabin was very important. Out here, because Hobo was never here, she's not reminded of her. Frankly, I'm not either. Because at home, you get in a habit. Like, for example, one of Hobo's routines was when I would get up in the morning and go to the bathroom and sit on the toilet, she'd come up to me and headbutt me, bump me with her head. That was her, I'm here, how are you today? I'd just scratch her ears, and it was just a very quick morning routine, but absolutely never failed. That was her morning checkup on me and her. That was our thing. And it's so weird not having that. Oscar's routine, for that matter, was in the morning, he would want me to go in and turn on the faucet in the bathtub for a bit, because he loved to drink the water as it dripped out of the faucet. And that was weird not doing that after he left. Even though I know I did my best for her, even though I know she lived a very good long life for a cat, even though I know it was just a cat. Of course, we're just people, aren't we? I mean, there are more humans in the world than cats, so technically they're more rare than we are. And it doesn't matter. Living beings can love each other, and it doesn't really matter. Oh God, that could be twisted the wrong way. If you don't know what I mean, get the fuck out of here. Anyway, even though I knew we did everything right, I still wish we'd had more time. But if she'd lived another year or two, I wish we'd had more time. You're never ready for it. But on the other hand, not only am I grateful that she went easy, I'm really, really glad it happened when I was there. Because if I'd been here at the cabin when it happened, you know, obviously I couldn't just drive up there. I would have felt absolutely horrible if I had not been there when my cat was dying and needed me. Because again, up to the end, when she drug herself out from under the bed to try to help me go shower, I know if I hadn't been there, she would have been looking for me. Because, you know, caring for me gave her comfort too. And I was able to be there. And it's really thanks to the cold weather that I was. Because if the weather hadn't turned, I would have been gone shooting guns out here. I will say this though, I'm not liking February as a month. You know, lost Hobo this year. Years before my dad died in February. Lost my grandfather in February. Yeah, so I'm really happy it's March. And that's one of the reasons I didn't do hardly any videos for this channel in February. I saw it described online as like emotional triage, where you cut back on the unnecessary things in life and only do what you have energy for, which has to be the bare minimum. That was for me, doing my job and trying to make videos for the main channel and just doing my family stuff. I just did not have the bandwidth to do model videos here or a lot of other extra stuff. I really didn't have the energy to shoot guns either much. And it wasn't just because of Miss Hobo. She was not, yeah, it didn't help things, but there were other things going on in life too that were really trying to knock me down. But I'm still here, and March started off with some really good news, which, gonna be honest, I needed some good news because of everything, and finally it happened. But I'll talk about other things that happened in my life in another black box, because I'm hoping to, you know, barring illness or something unfortunate happening, I'm hoping to be out here at the cabin for like a good little while. And it's gorgeous weather too. Last night was a little cold out. It's getting a little nippy out now, but the day is perfect. Tomorrow's a high of like 70 and sunny. Nights are in their 40s. Perfect sleeping weather if you crack the windows open. Peanut's with me. She's cranky that her favorite cat food wasn't available, so she's having to have a substitute, which she's only eating begrudgingly. But at least she doesn't seem mopey like she was at the house. She's not looking everywhere for Hobo. I hope wherever Hobo is, she's resting easy. You wonder too, and you know, I'm sure they do, but with pets, you hope they know how much you love them and how much they mean to you. I'm sure they do, though. And I'm also sure it never gets any easier, and I don't want it to, because that means I'm becoming emotionally detached, and I don't want that. Life has to have the lows. Life has to have the pain. We don't like it, but we have to have it. And even though this sucks, I had 9 years with Hobo, and she, you know, with me. And who's to say if she hadn't found us or if I hadn't taken her in, she would have lived. I mean, that big dog attack could have got her, or something else could have got her. So, yeah. Glad I was there when I went and where I was. Same with Seamus. Same with Peanut. That's why we do rescue animals. They need you. And they know you saved them. And they're grateful in their ways. This is Misha. Catch you very soon. Next time.